Okay, we do have a quorum. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I am Sharon Green Middleton, Vice President of the City Council, Representative for the 6th Council District, and Chairperson for the Economic and Community Development Committee. This afternoon, we will hear Bill number 23-0413. And in attendance today, we have the members of the committee, John Bullock of the 9th District, Mark Conway of the 4th District, Ryan Dorsey of the 3rd District, Odette Ramos of the 14th District.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we have Dwayne Adams, representative of the Office of the President. We also have Tiffany Macklin, Deputy Director for Legislative Affairs. And it's now after 2 p.m., so let's begin. City Council Bill 23-0413, the Solid Waste Management Plan for Baltimore, repeal and replace. For the purpose of repealing the Solid Waste Management Plan for 2013 to 2023 that was adopted by Resolution 14-019, effective October 30th, 2014, as amended by Resolution 15-025, effective December 18th, 2015, adopting the Solid Waste Management Plan for 2024 to 2033, providing for a special effective date and generally relating to the Solid Waste Management Plan for Baltimore City, agreed on consideration, requiring certain disclosures if a rental facility is transferred to a party other than a tenant, requiring certain reports, providing for certain penalties, and generally relating to providing tenants with the opportunity to purchase certain rental facilities. This bill was introduced on August 21st, 2023, and the bill's sponsor is the Administration City Council. We're going to start with agency reports, and we'll go ahead and start with the Department of Public Works, and they do have a PowerPoint presentation that they're going to present to the committee at this time. And you can begin by all introducing yourself and your team that's here with you, and then we can go into your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Vice President, members of the Council. My name is Richard Luna. I'm the Interim Director for the Department of Public Works. To my right, I have Marcia Collins, who's our Chief of Office of Legislative Affairs. I have Mr. Craig Jeter, who recently was approved as the new Bureau Head for the Bureau of Solid Waste. So again, thank you to the Council for approving his nomination to that seat. And then we'll also have a presentation by Megan Ressler, who works out of our Office of Waste Diversion within the Bureau of Solid Waste. The bill that we filed, we stand behind. I did want to note as well one amendment that's included in your package. It's amendment number 1, and I'll read this just for the record. On page 1, after line 17, to insert the following: a public hearing of the new plan as required by state law has been held. And so that was the one amendment as well that we were filing with this item.
Okay. Any questions on the amendment at this point? And hearing none for now, we can you can go ahead and start with your presentation.
And Megan, I'll just jump in first and just say, I just want to give kudos and appreciation to the staff within the entire Bureau of Solid Waste. A number of different public engagement series were held in formulating this plan, to drafting this plan and submitting it to you today. One of our key members of the team, Ms. Sophia Hussein, who leads up the Office of Waste Diversion, unfortunately she wasn't able to make it. She fell ill today, so Megan will be filling in her place, but doing a tremendous job as well of leading all of our waste diversion efforts and really looking at a comprehensive view of solid waste, our best practices, and how this agency and how this city is going to be set up for the next 10 years. So with that, I wanted to provide those kudos first. members, and then I'll turn it over to Megan to take over the presentation. Thank you.
And just to add, I know you had an extensive briefing with me and also some members of the committee just to kind of be prepared for today as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Luna. So I'm Megan Ressler, and I'm a program analyst for the Office of Waste Diversion, and I also was the program lead for the planning process. For this presentation, there's a lot to go over. We're going to summarize 200 pages of this plan, and we'll also talk a little bit about the development process and the purpose of the plan. We collaborated and got input from offices and agencies across the city to develop the plan. Specifically, we got input from all of the operations in the Bureau of Solid Waste, and DPW's Office of Legislative Affairs, as well as DOP's Office of Sustainability, were key members on our core planning team. We also worked closely with Geosyntec outside of the city. They provided technical expertise and wrote the plan. And we worked closely with the Northeast Maryland Disposal Authority. Next slide. We can go to the next slide. Great. We also pulled from planning documents from city agencies across city agencies, and those planning documents informed our long-term goals in the plan. They included Baltimore Sustainability Plan, the Disaster Preparedness and Planning Project, and Baltimore Climate Action Plan, just to name a few. We also included the city's carbon neutrality goals in our planning process. Go to the next slide. And as Director Luna mentioned, public engagement was a big part of the planning process. We held 5 public meetings for the 60, 90, 99%, and final draft stage. And we had 388 total attendees at those meetings that represented 77% of Baltimore zip codes. We collected public comment throughout the entire process at every single draft stage. We had 768 total comments, and we collected them both digitally and through public testimony at meetings. We compiled and reviewed all of those comments into top categories, which are listed on the slide, and we incorporated many of the comments and categories into the actual plan. Also, for transparency, we posted all of our categories as well as our responses, and if they were included in the plan, on our webpage. In order to encourage public engagement, we employed multiple outreach strategies, including press releases, newsletters, social media, and flyers. We also shared information with partners and groups and faith-based organizations, libraries, nonprofits across the city. We worked on removing barriers to engagement by offering our last 2 meetings online and in person in a hybrid form, and our first 3 were online meetings. We provided closed captioning at every single one of our meetings. We offered alternative slide decks for attendees with low vision, and we provided information on physical accessibility and public transportation before our in-person public meetings. We also translated our outreach materials into the 5 core languages: Spanish, Arabic, Chinese, French, and Korean. And we provided interpretation at our public meetings when registrants indicated a need. So before we go into our plan of action, I want to quickly go over the many operations that we have in our waste management system across the city. Our waste reduction and diversion programs include outreach and education in schools and in the community. We also do advocacy to advance state and local zero waste strategies, and we support and expand our food scrap drop-off programs. For some of our cleaning and grading operations, we do street sweeping, vacant boarding, graffiti removal, and community pitch-in program. For recycling, we are currently collecting the blue carts bi-weekly. We also provide single-stream recycling at all of our drop-off centers, as well as hard-to-recycle materials such as electronics, white goods, tires. And then for waste collection, we have weekly pickup to over 200,000 homes. We also pick up from the business district. We pick up at special events. We pick up bulk waste when requested, yard waste seasonally, and marine debris from our city's waterways. Most of our waste processing in the city is done by outside contractors or outside vendors. Our single stream recycling is processed at Waste Management's Material Recovery Facility, or MRF, which is located in Elkridge, Maryland. Our food scraps are processed at PG County Compost Facility, and we have an urban wood waste processing facility, which is actually a Baltimore City facility called Camp Small. And then finally, most of our city-managed mixed refuse is disposed at WinWaste, which is the privately owned incinerator. Any waste that's not disposed at WinWaste goes to Quarantine Road landfill, and our Northwest Transfer Station consolidates mixed refuse and single-stream recyclables and takes them to either waste processing or QRL or WinWaste. All actions in the plan are contingent on securing funding. So in section 5.1, we outlined potential funding mechanisms for the actions. And if adequately funded, the actions outlined in the solid waste management plan can divert or reduce about 280,000 tons a year during the planning period. Next slide. So now to hop into the plan of action. For our waste reduction and diversion actions, and really all of our actions in the entire plan, we have an emphasis on education and outreach. This will include a community-based social marketing campaign, which will inspire behavior change. We'll also have a zero waste coalition, which will convene stakeholders from across different sectors to identify priorities for city programs and goals. Over 30% of our waste stream is organics, so reducing and diverting food waste and yard waste is an important part of our strategy in our plan of action. Our food waste drop-off, for food waste, we'll expand our food waste drop-off program to include more locations. We currently have just expanded it to Johns Hopkins, UMD, and Loyola to provide 5 more drop-off pilots in addition to the 5 that we already have. We'll also expand our organics programs to collect in schools, government offices, libraries, community centers. And then finally, we will have a pilot residential curbside pickup program. We'll also increase our compost processing, in-city compost processing ability. We recently received a $4 million EPA solid waste infrastructure grant to build a compost facility at Bowleys Lane. This will allow us to enforce, or will be the first step in enforcing HB 264, which is a law that went into effect in January 2023 that requires large-scale food processors to compost, but they have to have a facility within 30 miles. and there is not currently one in Baltimore City. We've also outlined some plans to advance zero waste through legislation. This includes supporting mandatory commercial recycling and reporting. It includes supporting disposal bans for recyclables, and also enforcement mechanisms to make sure that the mandates and bans are successfully implemented. Next slide. So most of our cleaning and greening strategies emphasize reducing litter and illegal dumping. We do this either proactively through education and community engagement to change behavior, or reactively through cleanup and enforcement programs. Our community engagement will focus on vulnerable neighborhoods where illegal dumping and litter is persistent. And our enforcement will include an interdepartmental approach of enforcement, and it'll include things like tickets, signs, residential reporting, and license plate tracking. For street sweeping, we have plans to improve signage for parking restrictions, working with DOT to improve ticketing for parking ordinance violations, and also working with DGS to ensure that our sweeping vehicles are accessible in the bike lane. And then finally, for community cleanup programs, we'll partner with day labor and community service organizations, and we'll also expand our community pitch-in program and improve its coordination with 311. For recycling. So outreach and education is a huge part of increasing our recycling rates, including our single stream recycling rates. We're also going to return to weekly recycling in the first quarter of 2024. And also expand our public recycling cans in more spaces across the city. We're also going to look into maybe having cans with different shapes to decrease contamination. We're going to renovate our residential drop-off facilities to improve customer experience, but also our staff experience, and also the capacity and functionality of those centers. And then we're also going to expand opportunities for hard-to-recycle materials at these centers. That's going to include mattresses, glass, single-stream glass, textiles. We just started textiles at our residential drop-off centers, and bulk waste. We're also going to work on providing opportunities for green local manufacturing. This could look like connecting recyclers with businesses that want to buy recycled materials in the city locally. It also could look like having city procurement policies that really focuses on local recyclers. And then we are going to support C&D reuse and diversion through policies such as deconstruction bans, and also taking away barriers to using reused materials in construction. So for waste collection, our mixed refuse and single-stream recycling pickup, one way that we're going to improve that is we're going to right-size routes, equipment, and personnel. And this will optimize our mixed refuse routes, and it will also allow us to go back to weekly single-stream recycling pickup. We also have plans to improve pay and benefits and retention of our waste collection workers in order to address staffing shortages, and employ onboard technologies to improve our data collection and also our route optimization software. For bulk waste, we're also going to optimize the routes. This will help our bulk waste pickup times. We're also going to explore options to make bulk waste pickup more accessible for those that have disabilities that prevent them from transferring bulk waste to the curb. And then for the small hauler program, we're going to work on an automatic payment system that will create safer and more efficient payments that are connected to small hauler permits. We're going to expand locations, which will cut down on wait times, and also transfer the permit process from the health department to DPW. Next slide. So for waste processing, we're going to construct or support the construction of an in-city or regional materials recovery facility, or MRF. This will reduce transportation costs and our reliance on out-of-city vendors. The first step in this plan is to conduct a study looking at the environmental and economic impact of a system of in-city small-scale mini MRFs or a regional MRF with surrounding jurisdictions. As we've already mentioned, we're going to increase compost processing capacity by developing compost facilities. This will be a phased-in, decentralized approach by developing several small to medium compost facilities to meet the demand of increasing residential and private sector organics diversion. And the first step in that is going to be constructing a compost facility at Bowleys Lane, and this is going to be part of our Eastside Transfer Station expansion. And then finally, Camp Small, our urban wood waste processor run by Rec and Parks, is going to purchase additional equipment and personnel to optimize their operations and also increase their outreach and education so that people know that they can use this great facility in the city. And we're going to collaborate with Camp Small to use some of their wood waste to feed our compost facilities once they're constructed, to provide the browns or carbon for the compost. And finally, the end of our waste management system is disposal and transfer. For Northwest Transfer Station, our current transfer station, we're going to make improvements to their operations, which will include a ventilation system, a floor drain system, replace aging equipment, and hiring additional staff. We're also going to construct an east side transfer station at Bowleys Lane Drop-Off Center to serve the eastern and southern parts of the city. And finally, we're going to develop a long-haul disposal plan to reduce our dependence on wind waste and Quarantine Road landfill. This will start with a feasibility study to assess the city's needs and select the most financially viable, but also environmentally friendly and sustainable option. And this could look like truck options or rail options. Quarantine Road landfill, the city's one landfill or one usable landfill, is expected to reach capacity in 2028. So we have plans for lateral and vertical expansion to the adjacent closed Millennium landfill, which will expand its life to 2035. The plan also includes operations improvements to the scale house, payment system, and equipment replacements, and improving benefits and retention for workers. Finally, wind waste, the private incinerator in the city. The city's current contract with wind waste expires in 2031. As highlighted in the presentation, DPW is committed to expanding options for waste diversion over the course of the planning period. With an investment in recycling, reuse, and diversion programs, the use of wind waste facility for residential municipal waste processing is expected to decline over the course of the planning period. However, a large portion of the waste disposed of at Win Waste is generated in the private sector or also outside of the city. So a coordinated adoption of waste diversion practices across sectors and also regionally is needed to decrease the use of incineration in Baltimore. And finally, next steps. In just 1 month, November 30th, that's our deadline for the Maryland Department of Education, Maryland Department of Environment, for us to submit an adopted plan. And then if adopted, the plan will go into effect January 1st, 2024. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now each of us will start with 2 questions, and I'll go ahead and start my 2 with just something that I see offhand. The first is collaboration. So I don't see Baltimore City Public Schools listed as a collaborative partner, and I think that should be definitely added. Do you have, because I think it was mentioned at one point that you work with elementary schools, and is that?
Yes, we regularly work with elementary schools. We also pick up from Baltimore City Public Schools. We did give them the plan to review. They weren't one of our main core collaborators, and I didn't provide their name on that slide just as an oversight.
So do you need help in working with them, or you?
I mean, we collaborate with them regularly, and they did
Okay.
review the plan.
Okay.
So I think that
And
they
I
provided
think
their
it's
input.
important to
Yes.
add them definitely as a collaborator.
Yes, we can do that.
And
because-
Madam Chair, we'll also mention too, we have a very robust volunteer network, our Eco Warriors Challenge as well too. So our volunteer arm for DPW is very much ingrained in Baltimore City Public Schools and providing information from everything DPW, including best practices on recycling.
Thank you. And then also on the education piece, I see you have the Bureau of Water and Wastewater as one of course, is a collaborative partner. And I know that your apprenticeship program was the first government apprenticeship program in the country. And somehow that needs to be continued to be highlighted, especially I think in your writing and what you submit to the state, I think it's important to remind them of that there's a relationship there. And I think you still have a representative that is connected with the state's apprenticeship system. Is that still in the works?
Yeah, there was an individual that worked with the city that did have that connection. I believe we're trying to bring that person back on a contractual basis to help
Okay.
and kind of facilitate the next phase. But you're absolutely correct. Our workforce development programs, our apprenticeship programs, our Be More Wise program, all of our workforce arms within DPW are very robust. Our team does an amazing job of being proactive, going out there and identifying areas of need so that we can make sure we have direct pipelines for people that want to engage with us, want to start their careers with us or continue their careers with us. So definitely worth highlighting that. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to show that you are developing and training people, over this 10-year process for good paying career jobs. And that
that's-
definitely needs to be highlighted.
And it is, I didn't mention it in the presentation, but specifically, some of our workforce development plans are mentioned in the plan in order to increase our staff and retention, specifically the CDL driver training, expanding that program.
Yes, you definitely need to make sure that's in writing. Questions? And we'll start with Councilman Bullock.
So good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for being so willing to talk with us and communicate. My question is around the small hauler program. Can you talk a little bit more about what that expansion would look like? Because I know that contributes a lot to our dumping issues in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's my understanding that the payment program, the payments for the small hauler program is not digitally connected to their permits, and therefore there's some issues with tracking and maybe some people using different cars or not using the program as it should be used. So that's where this permit and digital payment system will come in. We're also going to expand it beyond just QRL to more sites for them to drop off, so that that will decrease lines that have been a problem with.
No, keep going, but how many sites are we talking about potentially?
I don't think it's indicated how many sites, other than exploring an expansion in the next 10 years in the plan.
Okay, and I think part of our hope would be that it would be geographically dispersed. I think that was part of
Yeah.
what you were saying too, to give people more access. And then just the second question about bulk waste. Do you imagine about the route efficiency? Can you talk a little bit about that as well? I think that was one of the key points.
Yeah, so we're working with a couple vendors that provide route optimization software, and they will use route optimization software to make the routes, and it'll work with 311. That'll be incorporated into the software.
Thank you, Councilman Bullock. Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How much waste do we collect each year, fall leaf collection? Yeah.
I don't have that data with me. I'm also unsure if we have that extrapolated from our main waste.
So we'll double check. Obviously, we have staff here, so they're going to be looking into seeing if we can pull that number, so we could get back to you during this hearing if we have it, or if not, how long that would take for us to pull. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
We do have a waste characterization study there's a waste characterization study that we
I'm sorry, a
did.
waste what study?
A waste characterization study
Okay.
where we have percentages that we can get that.
Okay. I don't think that I saw anything in the presentation specifically. Obviously, if you don't know how much tonnage there is of fall leaf litter that we incinerate, it's hard to know then how much we could divert, right? I guess my question is, at what point in this 10-year plan do we stop incinerating leaves?
So our organics curbside pickup pilot will be one solution to pick up a combination of food waste and yard waste to be composted.
Most curbside compost is like at the scale of picking up like a 5-gallon bucket. Most curbside leaf collection is at the scale of like 40 huge paper bags. Are we really saying that we're going to put that together like into one program?
The plan for the next 10 years doesn't have the exact programmatic operations of that, but I can say as the Office of Waste Diversion, we're working on a yard waste plan to back this up.
Okay, so do we have any sense of a timeline by which we're no longer incinerating leaves?
I don't have a sense right now.
Okay. Is it within this 10 years?
Yes.
Okay, that's, That's at least.
We're exploring options and putting together program plans now.
Okay. The other thing I want to ask about, reading the plan and looking at the presentation, you specifically used an image here on illegal dumping remediation that shows, I don't know, I feel like I've seen this tire pile. I feel like I took this photo of this tire pile and
I
sent
actually
it
took
into
that photo.
311 myself.
I took that photo on a bike ride.
Because I've taken this photo on the Gwynns Falls Trail by Edmondson Avenue. I've taken this photo like in countless places. I've taken this photo, less than 1/10 of a mile south of Wilkins Avenue. I've taken this photo in every part of the city that's possible. And what I see in the plan regarding illegal dumping is outreach, education, and enforcement stuff, that the language that's used remains, from what I can see, focused on enforcement after the fact, or hopefully on the rare occasion where we catch somebody in the act, an exceedingly rare occasion, I would say. And I don't see anything in the waste diversion section of the plan regarding that. And I know that I've had this conversation with DPW about how we get the most likely people who are doing this to stop doing this. That we have, if you walk, I mean, you really can walk there, it's that close. If you go to the corner of Gay Street and Orleans right now, you will see a huge pile of tires illegally stored outside of a used tire place, illegally stored in that it's flat out illegal to store tires outdoors in Baltimore City and under state code. And we do nothing at all to make those businesses stop doing that on a daily and weekly basis. And so I believe that they're just allowed to stockpile these tires and then pay somebody $3 per tire to get rid of them instead of paying $11 or $12 or $13 a tire to get rid of them legally. And so I don't see anything in the plan about addressing the source of this as a key way of reducing illegal dumping.
Yeah, Councilman Dorsey, thank you for those questions. I think that kind of touches on a much bigger, broader approach to combating illegal dumping that would require coordination between multiple city offices and assistance from our partners over in code enforcement within housing and community development. The other items, and the staff has done a great job in terms of putting together some great plans over the next 10 years that is going to help us curb and really increase waste diversion strategies throughout the city. I think another big part of it too that should be factored in is the process improvements, the new technology upgrades at our Northwest Transfer Station, at our Quarantine Road landfill, that's going to also help reduce wait times for trucks, for small haulers to get through the lines and be able to dispose of those materials that they're carrying. If you're a small hauler and you're waiting in line for over an hour or two to try to get into a facility, right, that's going to lead the door to somebody potentially going and dumping those materials illegally. So the more we can do throughout our entire processes at all of our different facilities to improve those wait times, to make sure that the process is streamlined as best as possible, those are other factors I think we should factor in thinking about that comprehensive approach to tackling illegal dumping. And obviously illegal dumping is a high priority issue here within the city, within the administration. It was part of the Mayor Sprints as part of his first go around. So we continuously collaborate with our partner agencies throughout Baltimore City to see what are the best practices we can put in place to help prevent this from happening.
Appreciate that. I guess I guess I'll just stress that I'm particularly concerned about tires because I've taken that picture in every corner of this city. And I'm sure that there are a dozen places where I could take that picture right now today if I traveled around the city. And also if I traveled around the city, or do what I did a couple of years ago and literally just opened Google Maps and started looking at used tire shops around the city and started asking if they're on the list that the state has of places that are properly licensed in order to handle scrap tires like this, that out of 20 that I sent to the state, 20 were not licensed, and they were the ones that I picked at random, and the ones that were most visible on Google Maps as people engaging in this kind of business. And so if DPW is not going directly to the source with collaborating partners, the fire department can write a ticket for the way that those tires are stored today. The housing department can write a ticket for the way that those tires are stored today. The Maryland Department of the Environment can write a ticket for the way that those tires are stored today. And none of them are doing it, and DPW is the one picking up the trash when they get picked up by some guy who rented a U-Haul and dumped them in Gwynns Falls Park. DPW needs to be going to the source to stop this from happening. And I don't see that in the plan, and that's my concern. Going to the source. Because the tires, look, anybody can I can get a dumpster brought to my house and dispose of construction debris, and it goes into a landfill, or it goes into an incinerator, or it goes into some facility that sorts different types of construction debris. Used tires are a distinct form of waste that is heightened in the ability to get rid of it. It warrants particular attention that's not being given.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. Your point is well taken. I can relate with Reisterstown Road and West Belvedere with the abundance of auto repair shops that continue to dump tires and do all kinds of things in that area. So your point is definitely well taken, and hope you can kind of consider something to help with this serious problem as well. And then we'll move on. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want
Go
to
ahead.
add something. So, Councilman, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, and I believe I'm correct in this. I know it's in Virginia, so I don't see why it wouldn't be in Maryland, but all of these businesses that sells tires and disposes of them, whether they're storing them temporarily, they're supposed to have a manifest in that location that shows where those tires were disposed of. I don't know what the city ordinance is, but that's something that can be asked for. And if they can't produce this document that shows the tires were disposed of, then that could lead to something right there.
The state of Maryland requires you to dispose of them through licensed places. The problem is that the state of Maryland does nothing to ensure that businesses operating in Baltimore City have the license that is required in order to do that business. They also do nothing, and that form of business, a similar license, it's a different type of the same license that applies to places that collect them, like people who sell tires and then store the scrap tires that they took off the vehicle. It's the same kind of license for the recycling and incinerating facilities that they are taken to. It's the same license that's required of the people who do the transporting. And I can tell you that if you look around the city today and see the trucks, the pickup trucks with built-up sides that have a pile of scrap tires on them, driving them who knows where, they don't have 4-inch letters on both the passenger and the driver's side windows, as the state license requires, and nobody is pulling those trucks over. If you have that license, it's a requirement of the license that you have such obviously identifying information on the vehicle, and we're doing nothing, and nobody's doing anything about it.
Thank you, Councilman Dorsey. Point, again, well taken. And I do want to recognize Nina Thimulis, the Interim Director for Government Relations, for joining us. She had a long meeting before she arrived here, so thank you for joining us. And now we'll move on the other side. Councilman Conway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Got a couple of quick questions. I'll get straight to the point. And it's interesting noting my colleagues' questions around tires. I have a different but related in the enforcement perspective question. So with the apartment building and condominium recycling program, I don't see any explicit mention about enforcement. How do we make sure that our apartment buildings are providing recycling for their residents? Who's responsible for that? Is it you guys? Is it HCD? Who checks it? Who enforces it?
I think this is going to be something that needs to be legislated. We need to have mechanisms for enforcement from the state for this state law. And in the plan, we do focus on legislation to uphold mandates, waste diversion mandates, and that's what it's going to have to be.
Got it. I think, of course, we want to be careful about bureaucracy for, especially housing in the city when we know that is a big problem. I think I really begin to wonder if there's a way within our licensing program for housing rentals and otherwise, if we can loop this into the requirements for those licensing programs. It's certainly something I'm willing to explore if that is a gap that we need to resolve. But I asked this question because I was talking to one of my staffers earlier, and they were saying we don't have recycling in our building, which blew my mind. And I feel like that's pretty low-hanging fruit, given we have that 35% 35% recycling requirement for the state. We're not currently meeting it. You have to wonder if this could make a big difference for us in the grand scheme.
Yeah, and as part of that 35% MRA rate, our office reaches out to all of the apartment buildings and ask for their data with limited responses. So we look mandates for collecting data and also actually collecting the recycling would be very helpful for that.
Got it. Thank you.
If I could just add, Marsha Collins, DPW, you are correct, Councilman, and the state law that enables that to happen came at a time when you could actually save money by recycling in these larger units. It's 20 units or more that's the required. But with the change in the worldwide issue of recycling, all of a sudden the bottom fell out of a lot of the materials that people were able to get picked up for free or get paid for. The same thing happened with our recycling program, that it used to help pay towards some of the costs, but it costs us in order to recycle. And so at that point, we were beginning to see complaints from residents who were saying, we used to have recycling, but we don't have it anymore. And it's strictly, in my opinion, without doing any research whatsoever, it's an economic issue for a lot of these locations. And so I think that, as Megan's pointing out, that we need to decide how we're going to handle that issue here in the city of Baltimore and put it in legislation and into the code. And so that's one of the things that we looked at in the plan to make that enforceable. It's a challenge for them.
Well,
Thank you for raising it.
Yeah, I look forward to working with you guys on it, and certainly if there's something this council should be considering in order to fix that hole, I think everyone here would be happy to take a step in the right direction. My second question, very briefly, is around composting. I was happy to see in September that we got $4 million from the federal government to stand up a composting facility at the Eastern Sanitation Yard. Excellent work. Glad we applied for it. I think it shows a lot for our vision for the future of the city. In thinking about what that may mean for us, can you talk to me a little bit about what educational campaigns we are rolling out across the city to help people understand how to compost? how do we make sure that when we make that investment, when we finally do have that that site stood up that can handle composting, that people know how to compost?
In the plan, we focus on a community-based social marketing plan, which really focuses on not only behavior change, but also getting input from the community for the education and outreach, and also removing barriers through, it also includes engagement, like maybe a contest or things like that, waste sorts, community waste sorts, collaborative waste sorts. So that will be part of our education campaign for composting and why composting is important. We also we have plans to increase our compost workshops. So that upholds our food scrap drop-off programs and lets community members know about those, but it also teaches them just the process of composting and tells them if they want to compost at home. We give actual compost bins, and that is also part of our outreach and community engagement plan.
Yeah, and I think about myself and how I learned to recycle as a kid. Before my parents learned to recycle, a lot of that happened in school, and just someone explaining how it worked, the paper, the plastic. Now, of course, it's one all in one flow stream, but I have to wonder if there's an opportunity there with our schools to partner with our young people. And then, Madam Chair, if it's okay, just on the back end of that, I wonder for composting, have we thought much about where that compost goes? And if there's an opportunity to partner with community gardens across the city so that we have that full cycle answer for the refuse afterwards.
To add to what the councilman had mentioned, I know that you do have partnerships with the Office of Sustainability. They, I know in the past, gave events specifically with composting and so on, some special events that they had presented with the community. I don't know if you're aware of that.
It might have started with the Office of Sustainability, but we, through DPW, give grow centers, which are resource fairs, and then they also have information about composting. Also part of the grow centers are those backyard composting at home workshops where we give instructions on how to compost at home, and we also give out compost bins that they can take home.
And state your name and you can comment as well.
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director in the city's Office of Sustainability. So as Megan said, in our office we piloted farmers market food scrap collection programs that are still going on at the Waverly and downtown farmers markets. And that is a way to directly expose people to the point about education to how to collect their food scraps at home properly and reduce contamination. And again, as Megan spoke to, they've expanded that program into 10 sites across the city. And so that's a great opportunity. Those are all great opportunities for educating and re-educating and helping people relearn how to do things properly. So,
thank you.
And to answer Councilperson Conway's question about what to do with the compost once it's done, we have indicated in the plan that there are options for revenue with compost facilities. It's not explicitly indicated in the plan, but in the office we have discussed also using distributing composting as incentives for composting. Maybe people who compost get a discount or free compost, or giving it to the community gardens and really illustrating this like circularity of composting.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Then we'll circle down to Councilman Stokes and then back over to Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question to DPW, because I have a resolution, I have not had a hearing, 22-0143, illegal disposal of used tires. I haven't had a hearing, but do DPW have a plan? Because, Councilman Glover caught somebody dump about 600 tires. So we should not be chasing people to find out where they dump the tires at, because that can come dangerous sometimes. but do DPW have a plan? Because if you go up to 25th Street and you go up to York Road, wherever you see them, they stack. My question is, who is monitoring the tires that they take in that they call used or illegal tires? Is the city monitoring that? So if I own a tire company, I take in 30 used tires. There is no documentation that I received those 30 tires, right? So I think when my colleague said it costs $12 to get rid of, I can give it to somebody for $2 a tire. So who in the city, or do y'all have anybody in your office that's monitoring these tire companies? So when they take in 30, 40 tires, when you walk into their tire shop, they should be able to say, hey, I took in 40 tires. Because if you don't, they can say they took 60. They can say they have taken in 10. But you don't know what they're taking in because nobody monitored. I know that's under the state, but the city going to have some kind of say-so in these tire companies, because if you see it, they're all popping up everywhere. It's a good business. That's fine. But what do you do with the ones that you that are illegal and you can't use anymore? We know where they're going at. They're going in the most dark, hidden places in the city, and they're getting rid of them. So my question to DPW, what kind of plan do y'all have in place to address this tire problem in the city? Because if not, DPW, you're going to be picking up more tires, 50, 60, 70, 500, 600. What are we doing? We're going to keep chasing illegal tire dumping? So can somebody answer the question?
Thank you, Councilman Stokes, and some great points that you raised, as well as going back to Councilman Dorsey's comments as well too earlier. I think it reiterates the point that this is a much more bigger, broader, comprehensive approach that would take, and my apologies, I kind of lost line of sight there. Comprehensive approach and working with multiple city agencies to coming together to determine like what are the best mechanisms to put in place, both on the enforcement side and then the proactive engagement side. So we do have a contractor that we work with that we dispose of the tires that we do collect, but to Councilmember Stokes' point, yes, we don't have somebody within the office that's going through there and monitoring those tire shops, just the same mechanisms that Councilman Dorsey was mentioning. So we're happy to sit down and work with you as far as a overall bigger, broader, comprehensive approach to tackling that issue.
So real quick, I just have a follow-up, Madam Chair. And I understand it, but I don't know, I think most of my colleagues remember Rudy Chow, who was the DPW director. We've been talking about this since Rudy Chow was the director. Nothing against you, Mr. Director Luna, but we've been talking this since Rudy Chow. And we still having a conversation and a hearing talking about, we're going to put something together. When? Because we get the calls about the legal dumping. DPW can't just go out and move it because there's a whole lot of tires. There's a process. But we talked about this since Rudy Chow. And you know how, I don't know if you know that, Mr. Director Luna, but my colleagues know that's been a while, am I right? And we've been talking about illegal dumping tires. So when are we going to have a plan? I hope, Director Luna, you'll have a plan because it's getting old.
Yeah, and like I said, we're happy to sit down with you if you want to help organize, but like it'll be multiple city agencies involved in coming together and tackling that same issue.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I think Councilman Dorsey has another comment on tires.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to Councilman Stokes' point, for those who don't already know this, we already have a law that specifically requires exactly what Councilman Stokes just brought up, that any business that takes in used goods for sale must, on a daily basis, on any day that they take in any used goods for resale, report that to the city of Baltimore. The problem is that they're supposed to report it to the city in general, and in practice, that may be the police department, but the police department says we only take reports of things that we are required to take reports of through the pawn shop laws through the state. We won't take reports of any other form of used goods business, and this law falls in the city code under the title on consumer protections, and I have a bill to create an actual consumer protections office who would be the correct entity to monitor these businesses when they are doing this, I would love for the finance department to write a report that says that we can
Councilman,
pass
is
that.
about the 10-year plan for DPW. So, and then on that note, before we, are you finished, Councilman? Before we move to Councilwoman Ramos, there seems to be an epidemic with the tire situation in the city, so I think it might be important to have that conversation, and maybe if you could at least follow up and get back to our committee, just some follow-up things that you would like to do. I know that we're going to be talking to the finance department because everything that you're doing is going to cost money, so we'll get to that point as well. And now we'll hear from Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at the actual, the draft, the actual draft that I found on the website, so hopefully it's the right one. I think it is. Page number 53, let me find it, has a really interesting graphic about some of the questions that some of my colleagues have asked about how much tonnage we already have and like where's it all going. I don't have powers to put it up on the screen, I'm sorry, but can you explain a little bit about this diagram? Is it the diagram that basically summarizes the entire plan, which is, you know, what the city manages waste and where's it going and where you want it to go? And then there's the managed by others, which is like small haulers, it's the school system, it's, you know, or not the school system, but all the other places that generate trash, that they take their trash to places and recycling, and that this is what we're aiming for? Is that, do you all know where I am? This is the,
He's trying to put it up now.
oh,
so
did
we'll
you
see.
find it? Okay, great.
But they can go ahead and, you can go ahead and discuss.
I'd like for Sean from Geosyntec to, he can really discuss the data of this
Okay. Push,
and where it comes from.
Push the button to,
identify yourself and push that button on the right.
Gotcha.
you got it.
Sean O'Donnell with Geosyntec. So this graphic actually shows what's currently happening in the city.
Okay.
It doesn't show the plan, but it was developed based on all of the tonnage reports that are put out annually by DPW. So it summarizes basically where all of the waste is generated. So there's a portion that's managed by the city, that's about 414,000 tons, versus the portion that's managed by others, generally in the private sector. Generally commercial waste.
Yep, that's it, yep. Mhm.
And then it shows all the different locations where that waste goes, whether those are residential drop-off centers, the wind waste facility, the Northwest Transfer Station, how much is recycled, what that waste is composed of, the recycled waste, the disposed waste, what the components are, and then composted, and then finally the portion that goes outside of the city, predominantly C&D waste. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you for explaining it.
Sure.
I figured that was one of the two, whether it was the future or at least explaining what's going on now. Are you working on, or do you have, and I didn't find it in just skimming the rest of the document, whether there's a diagram that shows what it's going to look like at the end of 10 years?
So we do not have a diagram in the report currently. It is summarized in, there's a series of tables in section 5 that summarize where the waste is going to go and how it's going to be processed and how much potential diversion capacity for each type of waste there is. But we do not have a graphic currently.
Okay, well, that might be something to think about as a auxiliary, attachment in terms of where we want to head. Because I found this helpful in terms of summarizing, where things are going now, who's doing it. Because we talk a lot about like the city collecting, but we do have all of these other actors that we need to make sure happens. So thank you for that, I appreciate it. The other question I had is, I have a bill that I've been working on for a while on the deconstruction. So the construction waste and deconstruction rather than demolition. And it looks like from the plan, if I'm reading this correctly, this is on page 167, that the goal is, well, we're currently deconstructing, requiring from like demolition, as well as gutting out a property, that kind of thing, we're only requiring right now 30% of deconstruction, where I'm hoping that we can, I think your goal here is 75%. I was going to put 60, but 75 is good. 60% was going to be the first phase, and then up to 80% for the second phase. And so I guess I'm just, I think, Ms. Collins, we just asked your office for a meeting to talk through the next draft that we put together. But I'm curious about not just the goals, but also one of the challenges is going to be finding the markets to be able to resell the materials. And we have loading dock, we have Second Chance. The other piece of it is kind of mandating the use of the materials, right? So we could potentially have a setup similar to San Antonio, who I talked to the other day, where the city has a setup where some of the materials come in, and it's required that if you're going to build a building, you have to use some of this material, right? And so that it would be done through us. Baltimore brick apparently is very valuable, by the way. So I guess I'm wondering if further exploration has really been done on what you all were thinking, or whether or not you knew that I was doing this and was going to rely on making sure that the bill had everything that you were thinking about in it, or if you've got some other ideas that we should be including. I guess the question is, because you're also dealing with markets for other recyclables, not just this one, so how that process is happening, whether we go ahead and include that, looking at markets for recycled materials as part of the deconstruction work, or whether it's something separate as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I think that what you're proposing really does align with the 10-year solid waste management plan, and we can pull some of the strategies from that to make sure that they align. And I look forward, the Office of Waste Diversion would love to work with you and the Office of Legislative Affairs in developing that.
Yeah, we
Does that
got
answer
a
the
draft from a few folks, and then I've been trying to do some of our own legwork in terms of looking at best practices, and then presented you all with another Google Doc version of a draft to take a look at. So I look forward to looking at that even further. I have a couple other questions, but I'll go for the next round. Thank you. I guess the only question was related to my first one in terms of the plan is 297 pages, which that's fine. And having flow charts and documents that have more of the timeframes that you're looking at would be helpful. I don't also see in here the potential costs. So is that something you're putting together as an afterwards, or am I missing it? In terms of the costs?
Yes, we're going to work with finance to put together potential costs. As far as all the actions on the plan, we have put together a spreadsheet with time periods in the plan, and we will continue to zero in on more specific time periods once the plan is passed and we start implementing it. In the plan, we've split actions into short-term, long-term, short-term, middle-term, and long-term. That's where they're split into now, but we will continue to be more specific once we put these program plans together.
Right, it's in the chart, like I'm just looking at the construction and demolition section, right? Just as an example, page 167, it's got this chart that has, timeframes, potential reductions. Oh, there's a cost right there. So there's a potential cost, although I think it's going to cost more than that. And some funding. So it's broken down by type of let's just say topic. And then, I think if I didn't see it in the plan and you already have it, I will look if everything is all in one place, or if it's in your specific spreadsheet to your work spreadsheet?
It's summarized at the end of each section, but it's not all 297 pages are in one place, so you kind of have to go through.
Councilwoman, I believe Department of Finance did, I'll turn it over to our budget director for that.
Yeah, Councilwoman Laura Larson, Department of Finance, we submitted a bill response yesterday that did itemize out the costs for all the initiatives. We broke it out by operating and capital costs.
Thank you. I didn't see that, but I'll take a look at it.
So my apologies for the late submission of our response, but we did try to quantify everything in partnership with DPW, again outlining what we believe the cost requirements would be on the operating and capital side.
Gotcha. So, okay, well, I guess we haven't gotten it yet, so I'm sure we'll get it. Yeah, okay, cool. Great, thank you. Thank you.
And we'll go back to Councilman Conway has another question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My next question is around recycling electronics. We know that can be pretty tricky depending on the electronics. What we accept and don't accept can be a little bit tricky. But my understanding is that it gets even more complicated now because the contract lapsed with our former vendor that helped us get rid of electronics. Can you tell me a little bit about what happened there and if we plan to renew a contract or what our proposal is for dealing with electronics recycling?
We fully plan on continuing electronics recycling, and we'll continue. We're still collecting electronics, and we will recycle all those electronics once our contract begins again. We work with the Northeast Maryland Authority for that contract, and we are working on getting that up as soon as possible.
Okay. And Councilman, the staff just notified me the contract itself is going back to BOE in December for reapproval. Yeah.
Got it. In consideration for that as well, how have we thought about fixing, repairing sometimes electronics that can be reused? Have we thought about that in our plan?
Yes, we've included strategies for sustainable materials management in our plan, including community engagement strategies like Fix-It fairs, and that can include reuse of electronics.
And then next question here is about street sweeping. So I have a bunch of narrow streets up in North Baltimore, 4th District, actually all over the city. Do we have intentions to return street sweeping to those narrower streets given the size of our vehicles?
Can you ask me that question again?
Sure. So we used to have street sweeping all throughout the city. My understanding is that our vehicles are maybe larger now or have some difficulty maneuvering within our more narrow streets. If that's not the case, then maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, we're picking up. We're sweeping the entire city with no delays. Maybe a couple months ago we had some equipment challenges and we had to cancel some routes, but now we're sweeping the entire city, and we've got a crew that if there's an alley that needs to be cleaned, we may not use a sweeper for it, but we have equipment and people that can do that for us.
Got it. All right, so if those issues come up where folks have an issue with a street, we can still bring that to you guys. And okay, excellent, thank you.
Councilman Stokes?
Thank you. Councilman Conway brought something to my attention when he talked about recycling. Street sweeper. People don't move their cars when street sweeping happening. I see it all the time. I get calls. Do you work closely with DOT so when somebody is in that truck and them cars will not move, I don't care how many times you do it, you almost got to call back to call Ms. Mayfield and say, they're not moving their cars, they don't get a ticket, and it continues the same places over and over and over. You can't you can't keep the streets clean if people do not move their cars. So do you work closely with DOT? There should be somebody who write the tickets when the street sweeper come through, because it's not being addressed in terms of making sure people be responsible enough to move the cars. So what happens is you can watch the truck go around 5 cars and the rest of the street is dirty, but there's nobody there to issue them a ticket, to let them know this the day, this the time you have to move your vehicle. What are you doing in terms of working with DOT to make sure we address that? Because it's not just in my district, it's all over the city. And I'm sure y'all done got calls, my colleagues done got calls, and it's just over and over and over. I got to call Ms. Mayfield. Okay, the same people don't meet the cars a week later, but it's the same. I got to keep calling them to say, you know, they didn't move the cars because they called me. So are we working closely with DOT when we doing street sweeping to make sure people be responsible enough to move their vehicles in the morning, so the guys that drive the sweep the truck can do their job? So can somebody answer that, please?
Yeah, Councilman, thank you for the question. We do work hand in hand with DOT. I can assure you there are probably several angry residents who've gotten tickets, and DOT is pretty good about issuing those tickets. When it comes to sweeping, we actually have one of our chiefs formerly works at that department, and the supervisor now, they collaborate on a weekly basis, and those cars that are causing us to not sweep a particular street, they are indeed being ticketed. Maybe you don't see it that particular time if you're over in the area, but it is being addressed, and we work hand in hand with them every single week when it comes to sweeping, because that's an essential service that is key, you know, to a cleaner and greener Baltimore. So we are working hand in hand with DOT.
Well, thank you for your answer, but it's not consistent. I'm telling you, I get the same calls about the same street on the same day all the time. I understand nothing saying y'all not doing the job, but it's not consistent at all. Absolutely not at all. I get a call from a lady 2 days a week, every week, about the same people that don't move their cars in the same block. And I got to call Ms. Mayfield almost every time they don't move their vehicles. So I understand what y'all doing, but it's not consistent at all.
So if you don't mind, I'd very much like to be involved in that. If you want to forward that information over to me, let me have my staff investigate it as well. Maybe we need to do a joint venture with whoever's giving information to your staffer, and we can go and investigate it and get to the bottom of it.
And real quick, it's nothing against it. Let me finish. It's nothing. Can I finish, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's nothing against DOT, but it's not consistent with the street sweeper. There's always nobody there, especially when it's the same block over and over and over. So, thank you.
So we have 3 more agencies that have to report out. Department of General Services. Could you say that as a matter of record? Identify who you are. Thank you. Push that button on the right.
Good afternoon. DGS has no opposition to the bill.
Thank you. I noticed General Services is not on here as a collaborative partner, or did I miss it?
We gave it to them to review. Go ahead.
You go ahead. Could you?
I can make it quick. DGS has been collaborating with DPW as far as inventory for fleet and also for building composting programs. So we're currently working together on both sides.
Okay. So you're going to add?
As far as the presentation, we had a very extensive list of people we collaborated with,
Okay.
and because we had so much information to get through, I didn't mention every single person that reviewed.
Thank you for
Thanks.
that. City Solicitor?
Thank you, Councilwoman. Michelle Toth on behalf of the City Solicitor's Office. We stand by our bill report approving for form and legal sufficiency with the amendment requested by DPW.
Thank you. And of course, last but not least, our wonderful Department of Finance. Where is all this money coming from?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Laura Larson, Budget Director. We stand by the report that we submitted. As stated in our response to the legislation, we do not oppose the legislation, but just want to be very clear that the ability to implement these programs will be conditional upon appropriations in the annual budget process, both the operating process and the capital budget process. As you all know, a big focus right now for the Department of Finance is the work around the 10-year financial plan to look at how we are able to continue to invest in core city services in a way that the city can sustain. And I think being able to meet some of the goals that DPW has laid out in their 10-year plan, it definitely has a tie to the work that's happening in the financial plan to, again, make sure that the city has sustainable revenue streams to support these service provisions.
Thank you for that. So at this point, we're going to check for, the committee's going to take public testimony. Is there any one that has signed up in person? We're checking now. And as he's checking for that, I just want to say to Department of Public Works, so you have heard from our committee members on some things that are very important from their observation of what they've seen in their district and around the city, from the education marketing piece, small haulers, composting, the tire issue and dumping, still recycling, and questions on street sweeping, construction debris, and so on. So I just want to say, if we could just, I know you gave us a copy of the PowerPoint, and if you are going to be adding anything to, if you could just give us an update before we, move on to our next council meeting, that would work out very well. And so we don't have anyone here in person, and so we're going to now check online, and we see no one online, and we're checking for phone callers, and there are no phone callers. Does anyone from the committee have a last burning question before we make a motion for the one amendment? And hearing none, and just to review that one amendment, it's on page 1 after line 17. They want to insert a public hearing on the new plan as required by state law has been held. So that's going to be added. Is there a motion to recommend the bill, the amendment?
So moved. Second.
So moved by Councilman Bullock, second by Conway. Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock?
Yes.
Is a yes. Conway?
Yes.
Is a yes. Dorsey? Is a yes. Glover, absent. Ramos?
Yes.
Is a yes. Stokes? Yes. Is a yes. Is there a motion to recommend the bill favorable with amendment? So moved by Conway, second by, was that Bullock again? Yes. Okay. Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock?
Yes.
Yes. Conway?
Yes.
Yes. Dorsey? Yes. Glover absent. Ramos, yes?
Yes.
Yes. And Stokes is a yes. And, oh, I'm sorry, Stokes, yes. This bill will move to second reader. As you remember to just kind of amend this, and that would work with the rest of us. And this committee is now adjourned, and this bill will move to second reader at the next council meeting.